So, now we're recording. So there's 6 key steps in the watershed management planning process. Building partnerships. There's a lot of varied interests in this room. So, but together we're building a partnership to improve water quality. That's ultimately what we're trying to accomplish. And so, characterizing the watershed. This is a lot of what we know what's happening in the watershed as far as land use, land changing. And so we're going to touch on that in a little bit. But that's really going to be that's coming in the next meeting because there's a lot of modeling efforts that have gone on to kind of tell us and inform where we need to be doing more work in the watershed. The management goals, practices, and measures. This is one of those. Every plan needs to have, either SMART goals or some type of plan, a roadmap on how we're actually going to meet these goals. So the last watershed management plan was completed in 2012. It's finalized. So we're now 11 years out. So we have seen successes, but again, you have to have measurable goals and a timeline to meet those goals. So you're ultimately we're seeing improvements. So that's our measurable management goals. And then a design implementation. IRWP has been carrying this current watershed management plan forward. OCC on the Oklahoma side has been working to implement their plan. So this is, again, identifies those conservation practices that we can implement across the watershed. That IRWP has been doing that on the Arkansas side. And then we carry it forward. So we go out, we develop this plan, we implement it, and then we have those measurable interim goals to make sure we are actually improving water quality. One wasn't built today. This is going to take some time. We know that. We recognize that. And if you start looking at state line concentrations, there have been market improvements in water quality. So this is going to take time. It's an iterative process. Next slide. So the last 2 watershed management plans, each state kind of developed them while they have the same key elements that are required by EPA. This is, again, a holistic approach that we're doing this in concert with each other. So the watershed management plans are going to look very similar. Each state will develop theirs independently, but we are sharing data, we are communicating and posting in meetings. So again, taking that holistic watershed approach. So what we really need to do is, when we're talking with landowners, producers, this is the old adage: conservation doesn't cost, it pays. Landowners are losing, a lot of stream bank along the river, not only along the main Illinois, but in the main tributaries along the stream. We're seeing a lot of stream bank erosion. It's the old adage of, I say wrong, an ounce of cure is worth a pound of. I always get but thinking about riparian corridors, alternative water sourcing, exclusion fences for livestock. And there's a lot of things that can go on our pasture management that will ultimately improve water quality, improve livestock health. So a lot of these practices that have been going on, it's just where can we possibly be doing more, working with producers to identify those practices, and same within our urban centers. What can we be doing that may be a little more costly on the front end, but longer term have better impacts for the infrastructure and water quality and flooding actually within our urban centers. So the whole big goal of all this is restore beneficial uses under the Clean Water Act. Fishable, swimmable, those are the designated uses that we're trying to restore. So that's the big goal. Next slide. Okay, so our points of contact, if you can't see these, and we're going to be sharing these. So my contact information at the Natural Resource Division, Philip's contact with FTN and Associates, and then Shannon and Greg's contact. So with that, Greg, do you have any closing remarks you want to add?
No, then I just might say that this is not a new effort. I mean, this is something that is a continuity of effort that began years ago. And we have a couple different iterations, each of the states. When I say we have a couple iterations of each state's own watershed plan. And we agreed, it's been some years ago after the third state joint principles, to continue this collaborative effort from a non-point source pollution management perspective, because that's the primary issue we're dealing with in this watershed, as states to continue working towards honing the planning effort, bringing things in line with new data and new partners and so forth in the effort. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize the fact that this is nothing new, and this is something that was going on even ahead of current efforts legally and things, and our leadership said, let's continue the process. And that's what we're doing. So I just thought I'd bring some emphasis to that.
I'm going to try to stand over here. I can't. I'll be constantly turning around looking at the slides and not facing everyone else out here. So what I'll do is and I apologize behind a few of you here, but like I said, what I'll be doing is kind of going through some of the water quality information. This was covered in a little bit more detail in the first meeting. There's, like I say, the meeting summary out there. If you don't have that, let us know. And like I say, they just got that on the IRWP website. So, and I may have to scoot up a little bit so I can see the slides better myself. But anyway, one of the things we do is to go through information that's already been compiled by other folks. Like I said, we're not starting from scratch. We're very, very fortunate to have a lot of data that have been collected on both sides of the state line in this watershed. A lot of water quality data, that is. And what I'm referring to, a lot of this information is put together into what's called the Bureau Frequency list, with a list of impaired water bodies. And so we looked at that latest list that's been approved on each side of the state line, and we looked at the impairments and sources. So within Arkansas, like I said, we've got a few places where we've got chloride and sulfate impairments and some pathogen impairments. Some of those causes were some were just unknown, but then we've got some a variety of different sources there: industrial, municipal, surface erosion, agriculture. Again, like I say, just some different sources, different places on Oklahoma side of the line. Like I said, we've got impairments, of course, in the main stem of the Illinois River, and for total phosphorus, some other impairments for pathogen, sediment, dissolved oxygen, just kind of scattered out in different places there. And again, most of those causes were identified as non-point source causes. Next. Here you get a little bit of a look, and I don't know if folks in the back of the room can read all the numbers there. Like I say, the slides will be available afterwards. But we looked at just some of the land uses here. You'll see on the left side there, you'll see the 2001 land use, and on the right, 2019 land use. And you can see, some of that last column is some of the changes, and you can see. Particularly the areas of higher imperviousness have really increased. And so that increases the amount of runoff that occurs, which when you're putting more flow into some of the streams, that causes more stream bank erosion. And as well as, like I say, you can also have other effects too. If some of your urban area, depending on what type of urban area it is, you can have some nutrient runoff as well too. Next. So today, what we wanted to do is our first session we had question and answer session. But today we want to break out and have a little bit more involvement with the stakeholders. And we're glad that all of you here. It's nice to have a situation where we're having to bring in chairs. That's great. So what we're going to do is try to get input from folks here on. What types of conservation practices are working and not working. Like I said, folks here in the room, y'all are in the watershed. And like I said, you've seen things, you may be doing things for yourself. And like I said, we'd love to get that type of information from stakeholders. Because this is a voluntary, non-regulatory thing, it's not going to work if we're proposing things that people don't want to do. That aren't working. So like I say, we need local input from folks. So we're going to have some breakout sessions with facilitated discussions. I think we got more of the details on the next slide there. So we just decided to break things out into two groups. One group will be discussing rural BMPs, another group will be discussing urban BMPs, conservation practices. So the rural breakout group will be talking about things such as agriculture, forestry, unpaved roads, stream bank erosion, which I know that can fit really in either group, but septic remediation, land management, those types of topics are anticipated there. And in the urban breakout group, looking at topics things such as municipal issues, stormwater management, which can be flooding or just stormwater quality as well, and also residential lawn management or any other, or maybe other urban issues that we have listed up there. And we've got 1 hour set aside for each group, and we'll break out in two groups, one in each room, and then we'll come back together and then share information. So if you were, whichever group you were in, you'll get to hear a summary of what the other group talked about. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Like I say, just kind of basic ground rules that you'd expect for a consolidated discussion, one speaker at a time. Request acknowledgement. We'll be informal and casual about this. Not going to be too strict on things, but we always want to try to listen first to understand and not criticize others, not to interrupt others, and be respectful, and then just kind of stay focused on the conversation there. So stay focused on the topic, that is. Okay, the rural breakout, if you want to go to the rural breakout session, that will be, you follow Katie into the room, get the name of the room, across the hallway. If you want to stay in the urban ones, then stay in here. And once we figure out how many people we have, we can go there.
I do want to say for the online participants, we do encourage you all to provide your input on your concerns for the watershed and potential best management practices into the chat, and we will capture that into the meeting notes. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Just to give you a quick summary of what we talked about in the rural breakout session. This will be a really high-level summary. I know we talked some of those people who were in that session. We'll probably say, well, wait, we didn't talk about this. We can't cover every detail, but just want to kind of hit the high points. And I'm going to ask Katie to, just things that I'll leave out or say something that's misleading that just correct me there. So anyway, like I said, we had in both sessions had the same, basic questions at the end. What practices have worked, what have not worked, what are some barriers in that. So I'm just going to. We kind of started out talking about poultry litter application. Surprise, surprise. So yeah, I know I can imagine that. So one of the things we talked about was that we started that time, but there are some cases, well, not just poultry litter, but actually some other types of waste we've been brought into the watershed and being land applied. Those are actually situations where a DEQ, and this is talking about in Arkansas, on the Arkansas side, where Arkansas DEQ does regulate those permits, and so we at that point kind of moved on to some other things. But like I said, we did talk about other parts of the poultry litter issue. Let's scroll. And we kind of jumped around, so the notes are kind of jumped around here in the same way. But we did talk about. We talked also a lot about stream bank erosion. I'll come back to the poultry thing. In terms of stream bank erosion, we talked about what are the barriers? The main barrier is financial. It's just so expensive, and it's hard to get funding for that. And also, if you're working in the stream, you got to get 404 permits from Corps of Engineers. So, like I say, it's something that's obviously there's a lot of streams that are eroding. This is a prevalent situation, but like I say, it's expensive to deal with. And again, that's the expense being one of the main hindrance, one of the main barriers there. One idea that was mentioned, and this was also in connection with, excluding cattle out of streams, and fencing off the streams. One of the barriers there was the fact that the floods come along and wipe out your fences. That it's really difficult to deal with. It's really expensive. Not to mention it's frustrating. But if you start to move your fences back away from the stream, you'll get you're losing more land there, and there's not enough compensation for that. So there's another barrier there. But one thing that's mentioned is that when we do kind of trying to tie some things together here is when we do stream bank erosion, somebody just came up with the idea, well, when we do stream bank restoration, can we make some of those areas, can we include some wetlands area in that stream bank and riparian restoration that will qualify as a wetland mitigation period? That provides a bank financial incentive for people who are doing that those credits can be sold to developers or whoever might need those credits. Now I'm jumping around here. So, in terms of some of what types of practices do we see being implemented in the watershed? I know one of the folks from NRCS in Oklahoma talking about how they do see rotational grazing implemented, like with the tire tanks and cross fences and water sources, things like that. And then, like I say, fencing cattle out of the streams is something that needs to be done. But like I say, there's just you've got, like I say, barriers there with the cost, especially with fences being taken out. We also had some folks talk about easements and with conservation easements, that is, where land is set aside for a particular amount of time, number of years, where that land can be developed, or there's certain restrictions on the land for that maintaining the conservation purpose there. And there were some of the barriers there were just that people are seeing land prices increase. They're thinking, I may want to sell this piece of land soon, or my kids may want to sell it, and I'm like, well, I don't want to restrict what can be done with it. So that's been part of the some of the barriers there to the implementation of conservation easements. Let me jump on to poultry litter. Again, there's a gentleman was talking about one of the barriers there is transportation. One person was saying, in Western Oklahoma, we can use all the litter you can produce here. We'd love to have every ounce of it. Can't get it there economically. So transportation is cost there. But then right at the end of our conversation, one of the other folks was talking about an existing company that has found ways to do that more efficiently. And they're currently transporting litter into southern Missouri or Kansas too, if I remember correctly. But anyway, taking it out of state. But the key is having not taking it to one place and then moving it to another place, moving it one time, and having the producer and the buyer and the seller lined up and coordinated to improve efficiency. That's being done through a nonprofit company. And also just had some general comments, including just how government agencies can work together across the state line. I know within this program, it's been great working with the OCC folks, and all our joint meetings have been very cooperative that respect. And also there was concern about folks in Oklahoma being able to access the numbers on poultry litter production, the number of birds in Arkansas, and so. And the answer to that was that data can be obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request within our what have and I apologize for being kind of jumping around here outside of our conversation, kind of jumping around our notes for our yeah, that's kind of the general gist. I know I said missed a few things, but I said all over to you. So thanks all.
No, I think that's great. Just so everybody's aware, all of this is going to get summarized into a larger report that will be shared with all of the people on the sign-in sheet. So just to make it real quick for that. If you haven't signed in, make sure you do sign in. So if you want to stay informed about this meeting or future meetings, just make sure you're on the sign-in sheet. But I think that's great. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, thanks. Like I said, we're doing this on the fly here. Once we get back to the office, we'll have a little more time to summarize things in a little more detail for the meeting summary.
Yeah, any questions for the?
Oh well.
No,
any questions on my very brief summary there?
Yeah, we're trying to keep this pretty. We're trying to get y'all out about 4:32. So, but I mean, we're here. But if you have questions, but questions, Philip or the rural worker. Not good.
All right, so Urban, I'm up. We had a great group of people to present, to add input into the urban best management practices. I'm going to summarize from my sheet because the notes are tiny and the distance very. So we had some overlap with the rural conservation easements came up in the discussion. So that was one. I'm going to go through this list. It's not really ranked or ordered very well, but I'm going to run through it. Floodplain management, we recognize that a lot of development in urban areas that is in the floodplain, and that's having a significant impact. So better education around construction management practices, maybe changes even in policy eventually, although that's non-voluntary, but definitely education is critical. Detention ponds came up quite a bit, retrofitting to improve infiltration, maybe phytoremediation, more utilization of phytoremediation. Really an underused practice for treatment of stormwater, and also on pre-treatment and septic tanks came up. There's opportunities to pre-treat septic tank effluent so that it is less harmful in terms of applying it or it infiltrating in dense urban areas particularly. There's generally a lack of education surrounding best management practices in the watershed, the feeling was. We need to really be working with planners and developers on how to utilize, how to integrate, how to incentivize using market incentives and marketing, how to use, drive adoption of best management practices. I'll mention riparian easements again because it came up as an important practice, the core study that was mentioned earlier, and there's real barriers to using easements, partially due to the financing that's available. So better financing would really help and reduce the barrier, possibly policy changes to allow other existing sources of financing be utilized by nonprofits, for example, as well, that are focused on that. Research was a key element in two particular areas. One is around precipitation and what is going to change in our watershed moving forward. We've got, currently the increase in precipitation over the last 15 or so years has been significant. Is that going to continue? Is it going to change? How is it going to change? Better understanding of that would be really good. A better understanding of our current landscape. And we have one of my IRWP board members here, James Simpson, brought up, as we develop green fields, pastures, you look across and you can see the swale in the field perhaps. Well, today, as a pasture, that may not be serving a huge function for stormwater and water quality. It is for water quality, particularly because it infiltrates, absorbs, holds nutrients and sediment in place. As soon as you develop around that, suddenly that is the stormwater retention or detention or conveyance infrastructure. So studying that, understanding that, master planning around that before urban development ever gets to that greenfield development. Pet waste came up as an opportunity, a need, particularly bacteria. Let's see, some additional barriers to best management practices in urban areas. Aesthetics. We don't like woolly and wild very much in our watershed. We like it maintained, of course, style, but I think that's shifting a little bit. Better information is needed for homeowners and commercial as well, and education and promotion around what are the practices that really work, that improve water quality and reduce water quantity. Lawn care application of fertilizers and lawn care management came up. We need more education around application of pesticides and fertilizers. We need to work with PLAs to better manage lawns and think about, maybe you don't have to, it doesn't have to all be mowed. Perhaps you can have woolly and wild areas, rain gardens integrated, different practices. Let's see, I'm getting close. Technical assistance in all of this is still a deficit to some degree. Better marketing, I kind of talked about that, but utilizing the market better, let's sell green, for lack of a better analogy. Homeowners, new homeowners coming in, is there a way to promote, that rain garden in the back that somebody wants? So, currently, but the next homeowner doesn't. Maybe it's a way to actually increase the market value of that property. I don't know. We didn't know, but possibly. Downspouts, don't stop running them onto the driveway, run them out into a grassed area. Very simple. Pervious pavement, green streets came up as best management practice that it could be utilized more. Maintaining stream form and function. We talked a little bit about floodplain management and development in the floodplain, but there is certainly more opportunity to work with policymakers and work with developers on education around that and maintain cover better and hopefully eventually stop constructing the floodplain. That'd be my ask. But so that's it. Kelsey, anything else I need to add, or anybody that is part of the group? And we will get this a little better summary than my chicken scratch rushed right at the end to kind of summarize.
So I think urban forest systems are important, especially with increased development. If there are opportunities to incentivize leaving large trees while developers come in, that's a good opportunity, especially trying to maintain canopy cover in impervious surface situations. And then the second thing is cities like to try to evacuate water as fast as possible. And so are there opportunities to try to do a slow release system in urban areas that's not going to turn everything into a mosquito pit?
Thanks, Ken. Those are good additional ones. We talked a little bit about management of stormwater in urban areas. We didn't talk about forest canopy. So any other observation, things you all think we may have missed from that discussion? All right, I'll turn back over to Tate.
Okay, thank you to everyone for your participation and patience during that process. That's really great information. Can everybody hear me now? It's still in the back? Okay. So that's really great information. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Phil, for the synthesizing that. We're going to kind of breeze through these next few slides. I think this is what everybody's also interested in, is when are we meeting next? We're going to try for August. I hope that we're going to be able to meet that. We've not come together from the two states and our consultants to identify an exact date or location or time. So stay tuned to that. That's why I encourage you, if you haven't signed up, make sure we have your information so we can notify you of these meetings. But this third meeting is going to be, it's going to be a lot of presentations. It's going to be a lot of pictures. It's going to be a lot of data, because ultimately this is how we're going to prioritize where we're trying to emphasize a lot of these conservation practices you were all just telling us. Then hopefully in October, we'll have a larger information summary where we've taken a lot of the information from our water model that we're going to talk about here in a minute and the conservation practices. And so we can start looking at, if we were to do this best case scenario, working in these smaller watersheds, because right now we're talking about the entire Illinois River watershed, but what this model is going to do is really help us hone in on some target areas, priority areas where we can see higher return on investments for improving water quality with these conservation practices. That's part of this whole process. And we do have, through the rest of the year and early 24, we can continue this process if needed, if there's need for additional meetings, but we'll determine that probably at the end of the October meeting. Okay, so what is a SWAT model? It's the soil water assessment or analysis assessment tool. So ultimately, this is a very complex model with a lot of data inputs where we're looking, and I'll get into all the data inputs in a moment. But again, Arkansas is basically modeling down to the confluence of the Barren Fork. So we are going into Oklahoma, but in order to model it effectively, but we don't have all the Oklahoma data inputs that you'll hear Brad talk about in a moment. But there's 28 smaller sub-basins in Arkansas, and that's ultimately what we'll be focusing in on the Arkansas watershed management plan. And then you can see all the smaller, maybe you can't actually see that in the very back, but there's some smaller watersheds on the Oklahoma side, and that's where their watershed management plan will focus. So FTN and Associates was on contract with Arkansas. Oklahoma Conservation Commission has used Texas A&M, and our contractors have been working back and forth with us. We're sharing all of this data, so all the same data is going into the model. So ultimately, we should be seeing the same outputs. So point sources do go into this model. We have to capture all sources of nutrients, both non-point and point source. So we're utilizing all of their current discharge monitoring data to go into the model so we can capture that. But again, what this plan is about is non-point source. That's pretty complex, but again, this just gets into there's a lot of data that goes into this. FTN's been working on this, and Texas A&M have been gathering data now for almost 12 months at this point to get to this point of actually running the model, calibrating the model, and identifying those watersheds. So I think in one of the working groups that we talked about the 303D list, the question came up, who is actually collecting that data? On the Arkansas side, that is Arkansas Department of Energy and Environment, Division of Environmental Quality, USGS, and the Arkansas Water Resource Center are primarily just collecting water on the Arkansas side. Brad will talk about on the Oklahoma side here in a second. Our model on the Arkansas side was calibrated to 16 locations. So as all this water, basically think about storm flows, overland flows, coming in, and the model is basically taking all of that to evaluate the current condition over a large watershed scale. And again, we need all of the information, meteorological data to go into this as well. Right. Now I'm trying to honestly simplify that as much as possible. We'll get more into it in the third meeting because it is pretty complex.
Okay, so as Tate said, we were already working with Texas A&M on a larger project called the Oklahoma Hawks model. It's a SWAT-based model, so it uses SWAT underneath it, but it's a web-based, a cloud-based model that covers our entire state. And at the time we started this, we started talking about building that model. We decided we would include the Illinois River in that as well, and then hire Texas A&M as consultants on the side so they could help me with some of the modeling. It wasn't all put on my desk. So we have a cloud-based model. It's a public accessible website, so anybody that's interested can log in and you can look at the model when it's completed. We do have a live version of it right now, but the water quality calibration is not there yet. So when it's done, anybody that wants can access it and you can look at it and work with it all you We're in the process still of finishing up calibration. I talked to Katie Mendoza this morning, who's the project manager actually for the entire Hawks project, but they've updated the management files and they're in the process of finishing up their calibration for water quality. We'll be able to store projects on there. You can run as many scenarios as you want. You can download the model, you can manipulate it or edit it on a desktop, make maps, do whatever you need to do. Some of these are a bit dated. I believe our climate goes up to 2020 now. We're also using the PRISM data. And what that is instead of the Illinois River is a really big watershed, you may get a big storm in one section of it, but you may not get anything in another section. So you try to divide that up and have as many points of rainfall as you can distributed across an area. And so what PRISM does is it takes actual measurements and it does an interpolation between them. So you've got a little bit more coverage rather than just a couple of points that may or may not cover the area. Atmospheric deposition, it's from the NADP. We're using the NHD boundaries like the Arkansas model. Our land use should go up to 2020 as well. And then we have the crop data layer entered in there for more specific crops, which isn't that much of an issue in the Illinois River. We've got county level Sergo data for the soils. We've got all of the dams information from NHD and from the National Inventory of Dams that we got from NRCS. We're using the same point sources that Tate had on the Arkansas side. And then the management is something that we've coordinated with Arkansas on their end, and we've gotten ours as much as we can working with NRCS. Those are our calibration sites. We've got 10 locations where we've got it calibrated at the HUC 12 level. We actually are working on the HUC 14 level as well, so that kind of splits the HUC 12 in half. We do have point source data from Arkansas and Oklahoma, and we've got land management data as well. That's it.
Okay. I think we're actually going to be able to get you out of here at 4:30. So again, we're going to leave up our contact information. So if you want to take a picture of it, feel free to reach out to myself, Greg, or Shannon, or Philip. And if you have any specific questions on the process, meeting dates, times, locations, all of that will be coming. I do ask that, as far as the report out, that it usually takes a couple of weeks to a few weeks to get all this information summarized. Then we'll have to review it, and then we can distribute that. So just ask for your patience on that. With that, Greg, do you have any other closing remarks? Okay. I just want to thank you all again. I can't thank you all enough for participating. I was telling Mr. Ed White in the back, this is one of our largest attended watershed management plan meetings since I've been involved in these, and even when I was not at this organization, but attending. So thank you again for your interest. Thank you to the Cherokee Nation for hosting us. So please stay tuned, and I hope to see you all again in a couple months. So I'll be lingering around if anybody has specific questions for me or for anyways. Thank you.